You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Good morning, 6 AM in Mauritius, 2 AM here in the UK, and we are watching Cyclone Cilida with the latest updates coming to you here this morning. And what a storm it is, still headed for Mauritius. It's finally got that eastward component in its motion, but Class 2 warnings remain in effect across the island, and a pre-cyclone alert still in effect for parts of Réunion. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm here with you for this hour again. You may have seen me earlier, quite a while ago now, yesterday. It was over here and it was over there as well. I'm joined by the team in this hour, consisting of quite a few people as a matter of fact. David, first of all, hello, how are you tonight, this morning?
Not bad, thanks Nathan, good to be here.
And you are simulcasting this stream on Facebook, am I right?
Yes, I am. I'm just fine-tuning it, but I'm definitely up and running.
Well, fingers crossed it's working properly. Tim, how are you tonight at your time?
I'm doing great, Nathan.
We've got time zones everywhere, so you may hear me saying tonight, this morning, this afternoon, goodness knows what.
Yeah, it's definitely a logistical challenge keeping them all straight. But from my HQ, I'm doing great. Interesting to see this monster storm in the southwest Indian Ocean, especially this time of year.
We're also joined by Max. Hello.
Hello.
You joined us earlier on today, or yesterday as it was in Mauritius, and you're back with us again tonight. Strat's also with us for this hour.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on a live event.
And don't we know it?
Force 13 week.
Well, that's pretty much the amount of time it's been since we last did our proper live events. But of course, we're all dedicated to giving you the latest on this storm this morning. You can see on the latest satellite imagery here, this is the satellite indicated rainfall totals. A significant band moving through Mauritius there, just in those frames. Another one that's on its way. The main bulk of the storm still staying offshore. If you've got any questions for us during this hour, send us a message on the YouTube chat feature. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of those tonight, and thankfully we have a few other people to talk about it with us.
I think we should start with it. There's a question. I saw this question probably right when the stream started. People asking, was it a Cat 5 or will it hit Cat 5?
Interesting point. Our operational analysis put the storm at Category 5 status for a short amount of time in between our two live streams that we have done in the last 12 hours. So we believe, yes, operationally so far, pending further analysis. At the moment it is not. It has weakened significantly, but not a huge amount. It's still 150 miles per hour according to our best estimates right now. That is a wind speed in kilometers per hour, 240 kilometers per hour sustained winds with higher gusts. The pressure we're putting down, I think, was 930, and we believe it was stronger earlier. Class 2 warnings in effect for Mauritius. What we've seen in the last few hours is that the track forecast of the storm has changed a little bit. It's shifted a bit east because the storm is now moving further east than forecast. Just a little bit, but it could make, and probably will make, all the difference. We've really started to see that southeastward element creep in the last few hours, and it is continuing. And that means that I would say it's now guaranteed that Mauritius won't get the worst of the storm. Hurricane force winds, maybe, but chances for that are now fading as well. Tropical storm force winds still the order of the day for most of Mauritius, if not all of Mauritius. Tonight into the early hours of Sunday morning is when we're expecting the worst effects of the storm to reach land.
I think the very fortunate thing is that this is a pretty small storm in size. Tropical storm force winds extend at the largest extent 80 nautical miles out of the center of the storm. So even if the storm were to track a bit closer, we're looking at a situation where the strongest winds would be very hard to get to in this current scenario.
Alright, what are we looking at on the screen here?
I believe that's my screen strip. That is the Sims trajectory from the JTWC. This is addressing one of the questions that was out in the comments of how close it would get to Mauritius. As you noted, Nathan, that the track is further east than what has been anticipated. JTWC had it at 58.2 degrees east longitude. I believe before we went on air, we had confirmed it is at 58 degrees east, so it's just a little west of the 12-hour mark. Current track has it missing Mauritius to the east and missing Rodriguez as well. As Strat pointed out, the storm force winds do go out 80 nautical miles, so even at 24 hours out,
more than
Mauritius
that, actually.
could get...
Depends which agency you go by.
Yeah, that's true, but going off the raw numbers that Strat had just given a couple minutes ago, even at 24 hours out, Mauritius might get maybe some minimal tropical storm force conditions just off the outer edge of Cilida as it passes through.
Yeah, we're getting some questions about whether or not the storm's doing an eyewall replacement cycle.
No, it isn't at this time.
I kind of rushed into this, so I didn't really get the chance to look at that very much. I am looking at some satellite imagery, and it does look like the western side in particular, the southwestern side, has deteriorated significantly in the past few
No, that
frames.
is true, yes.
Past 2 or 3 hours in particular. It looks like right now it peaked maybe midday, an hour or two after we went offline for the first time.
How long ago was that now? I'm losing track of time myself. About 11
6
p.m.?
hours ago or so.
So about midnight Mauritius time.
Yeah. And someone was asking, when was the last time there was a Category 5 storm in the area, and like when? Or like what the name was?
Well, it wasn't in December, I can tell you that.
How rare is it to see a storm of this intensity at this time of year?
Well, it hasn't happened before west of 75 east.
So this, and how long do those records go back?
Well, it's speculative, isn't it, really, when you go back beyond satellites, because we really don't know, honestly, how strong some of those storms might have been. But I was looking back through some archives, and the closest that a storm would have come to this intensity would have been, forgotten the name of it now, a cyclone that occurred in 1996, if anyone can help me out there.
Yeah,
in
give me
this
a minute, I'll do
region.
some research on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be of no help. Sorry.
And was it? Someone's asking if it's going to intensify more, or if we think it's just going to weaken from here on out.
Cyclone. I've just saw the name there briefly. Oh, I've lost it again. Daniela in 1996 was the most comparable storm to this one that we're watching right now for the time of year.
As well?
That one I think reached Category 4. In fact, according to Force 13's archives, reached 150 miles per hour, and that was at the very beginning of December, actually.
How close was it to Mauritius in general?
I think it was a bit further west than this storm was. Further west.
Yeah, and we're seeing some questions. Do we think the storm's going to intensify more, or has it really hit its peak? I mean, looking at its satellite.
That is an interesting question. I want to show the viewers one thing in particular that will hopefully answer that question for you, and that is the HWRF forecast, because No, that's the Discord room. There's the HWRF forecast, which it was actually predicting a secondary peak of this storm at Category 4 intensity. So it actually predicted weakening to Category 3 until pretty much the closest point to Mauritius, and then re-intensifying to Category 4 again. Now that hasn't happened so far. It has stayed stronger than that, but that is possibly a scenario. What we do know is that it's pretty much got until its closest pass to Mauritius, until wind shear gets too high and sea surface temperatures get too low, and basically after it passes Mauritius you can write off the storm in terms of it peaking at any higher intensity than what we've already seen.
Why is this person in the chat constantly talking about Wilma and just giving all this information?
It's not for me to pry.
What relevance does it have to this stream?
So, was there any model presidents for this? Did any of the models show a high-end Cat 4, minimal Category 5 coming out of this thing? Or
No.
is the HWRF the closest we saw?
Well, you've got the COTC that ups everything, but it had the peak happening at the wrong time, so it really doesn't count, to be honest. So, no, models didn't have this at all.
This is
However,
the second storm.
It
in
is a
row.
pretty small cyclone, so
Yeah,
it
both
is
of
more unpredictable, and you may well see it weakening more quickly, maybe.
But both of the storms, Kananga and Cilida, the models didn't really predict to get to their intensities. And you're right, that is because they're both smaller storms.
Someone just asked, is it hitting Reunion Island?
The chances are very low for tropical storm force winds. You see that every so often at the bottom of your screen, scrolling by all the locations involved. When Reunion comes up, I think it says,
10 or
there it
5%.
is, strong gusts and squally showers possible today and tonight, and nothing more.
Now, right now, with the way the track is going with the JTWC, it's going to be way too far east for it to be any impact on Reunion, except for the occasional squall line that might blow through.
Yeah.
Also, rip currents and heavy surf are also going to be
Of
a factor
course.
as well. You know,
Oh,
that can go-
absolutely.
that you know, no matter where the storm tracks at this point, Reunion, Rodriguez, and Mauritius are already going to be feeling those, and then by tomorrow, it's most likely
Alright.
some of those conditions will reach the eastern coast of Madagascar. as
These
well.
people aren't local. I need to correct your pronunciation on the island of Rodrigues.
Oh, yeah, it's Rodriguez. Yeah, I made that same botchery. But what I've got up on my screen, Nathan, this is the
Yes.
it's upper level steering layer for the 200 to 700 millibar part of the atmosphere, upper troposphere. And since we are looking at a storm that we discussed was about 125 knots, this is the current steering pattern, which does mimic the HWRF pretty well, taking it well east of Mauritius, maybe steering it towards Rodrigue a little bit, and then going further east to where it may interact with Kananga later on, but that's really too early to tell at this point.
It's going to be pushed further south than that.
Right. And this is just as of the 2100 UTC run that
But that
may
steering that
change.
you're seeing there, that is why it's bending towards the east right now, because of what's further
Absolutely.
south there.
Mm-hmm.
Will Mauritius get gusts over 120 kilometers an hour tonight?
Tonight as in Saturday night. Well, that would be the time for it to happen if it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hurricane force gusts for those that don't
Hurricane
know
force
kilometers.
gusts, very possible for Mauritius on Saturday night, but it's probably trending closer towards the early hours of Sunday morning now.
Someone asked a question also. This is a kind of a weird one, but it should probably be answered anyways. Someone's asking, can it merge with Kananga? The answer is clearly no. Kanaga's their movement speeds
it can be a
and
relevant question sometimes, but in
Yeah,
this
that's true.
instance, there's not really a chance of that. They're still pretty far apart.
And
That
Kanaga's going
and-
to stall out, and Cilida's going to start moving more and more quickly to the south-southeast and then southeast as we keep going.
We have a lot of questions coming in. Keep them coming. We'll try and stay on top of that.
Is
A lot of
Reunion
general
Island
questions
getting
there that
hit?
we'll probably get round to answering anyway.
Well, direct hit on Reunion doesn't
No.
seem likely at this point, but Yes, for the most part, I will say, at least some storm conditions are possible, and I'd say even likely on Reunion through the weekend.
Well, I'm not so sure about that
Well,
anymore.
squally weather probably as the storm gets its closest approach.
But
The
what you're
imagery
looking
of
at there, I just need to bring us up to the water vapor imagery just to illustrate this point here. There is a massive, well, it used to be massive, actually closing in quite quickly, a dry air slot to the west of the storm, which means that the western side of Cilida is actually quite dry. That's why Reunion haven't seen very much from it yet, and that's why Mauritius had some glorious days prior to these rainfall, rain showers. But you can see the main part of the storm, its inner influence is really pretty small when you look at it. You can see in the green areas there the storm itself. We've seen storms much bigger, much bigger than that. So what you've seen so far is just, you know, the edges. What you're really going to see pretty soon is the main part of the storm pass very close to Mauritius and indeed over part of Mauritius. But you look at the way it's been traveling in the last few hours on this particular imagery, and you can see just how it is. It was heading straight for the island, and now it is veering away off to the east. We didn't know exactly how much it was going to do this, and we didn't know how early it would make this turn. That's why yesterday we were talking a lot about the potential for severe impacts from this storm. But I must say, with this movement, which we expect will continue, it's really putting Mauritius not in the clear, but clear of the worst conditions and possibly clear of hurricane conditions now.
And I know you mentioned it earlier today, I forget if it was during a stream or afterwards, that the fact that the storm is significantly stronger than initially forecast is helping it get pulled further to the east.
Yes, if it stayed weaker, Mauritius might have been in more trouble, ironically.
Oh,
Nathan, I have a
completely mixed
question,
up
side
Mauritius
chat
and Reunion.
from Ken on the Facebook page.
Okay, yes.
Can the cyclone recur to the west?
To the west? No, really, no, not a chance on that. There's the steering influences that we've seen really directing the storm towards the southeast. It's the question really is, to what extent southeast is the storm going to go? It's not going to go west anymore.
And someone's asking again, is Cilida a Category 5? Not now.
No.
It certainly doesn't look as impressive as earlier, but we do believe it may have had a potential brief peak at Category 5 status earlier today.
We do believe.
And then, again, just with Reunion, just to reiterate, that dry air slot's really pretty. What is it? 10 or 5% chance of tropical storm force winds from the graphic you had up, depending on which part.
15, I think it was.
That's what I saw on the stream a couple minutes ago, so I'm just reiterating that one.
I think it is down to 10 now. It went down a little bit, but yeah, the chances are low, very low.
And Nathan, just to reiterate a point you made earlier about the steering track, I'm looking at every storm intensity on the sim steering layer that we had looked at earlier. It doesn't matter what intensity it is, everything is pointing towards a southeast to an eventual southerly track, so there is no western movement in the forecast right now.
I'm not sure if any of you guys heard me earlier, but on that one previous question, I completely mixed up Mauritius and Reunion.
Oh no.
Feel free to put that on the bloopers if you want.
Welcome to the club,
my
Max.
first storm update's going on the bloopers. Don't worry about that.
So there's the latest imagery once again, another look at one of the infrared perspectives. Let's try another one so that we can show you all of the different views that we can show you. This is one of the infrared views that often makes the storm more menacing looking. It's been used for a very long time.
A couple more questions, or just things. Someone accidentally put their thing in 4 times. I don't know how they do that, but the first one is,
oh my,
some moderate winds occurring in the central plateau. That, it's just an update from someone on the island. That's nice.
I'll tell you what, sometimes people put in 4 comments in a row because their phones, it happens to me, my phone tricks me into saying the message has not been sent when it actually had. So I pressed the retry button 4 times until it works, and then I noticed that it's happened four times. The message has been sent.
I think
I've done that myself as well.
We got a nice update from a viewer in Mauritius saying that there's moderate winds occurring in the Central Plateau. The higher up you go in elevation, the stronger winds you're going to see. So probably.
Well, and that would be consistent with this image that you have up, Nathan, with some of the feeder bands that are fanning off of the outflow that are hitting the island of Mauritius. So the winds are very consistent with the situation that they have showing up there, with the squall lines coming through, dropping some rain, and some increasing winds up through there.
And the person that may have accidentally typed it in 4 times, they're saying, we're on the south coast of Mauritius. Would it be smarter to move inland? Would this be safer? I mean, if you're on the southern side, moving north, if you're on the very southern side, depends on if you're on the southwest side or southeast. Moving north would probably get you closer to the storm, so if you're on the south side, it'd probably be better to move towards the southwest part of the island if you're really seeking shelter. Let's see. Someone
asked if we can do a report on Hurricane Michael.
Hurricane Michael.
Wrong basin, wrong time of the year for that question.
Yeah.
Okay. Went through a list there. I need to time someone out. I accidentally made someone a moderator for a second.
Strat, what are you doing?
I was trying to time someone out.
Someone was in luck there. Well done.
No, they're not a moderator.
On the moderator job.
Nathan, we have a further 2 questions from my Facebook.
Throw them at us. We're here to take all your questions today.
Expected wind. We've got an update on the wind factor, and secondly, will the cyclone season be very active down here in the South Indian?
Well, in terms of the first question, I believe the Sims JTWC model that I had up earlier shows it at about a Category 3 equivalent, which I believe that is a severe tropical cyclone on the Mateo Franca. I might be wrong on that. If I am, correct me on it. But that puts it right about 105 or 110 knots off of the JTWC model there.
That's 10 minutes sustained wind, though, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. I think right now we have it at 150, although the latest rain doesn't look really very strong like that.
I've drawn a line, folks. This line is showing the storm's trajectory at the minute, and if we were to extrapolate its trajectory, that's where the storm would end up going. Now, when you look at the influence of the storm, I've got to tell you that unless we see a significant southward deviation, which I don't think will happen, most of this storm is now looking like it could miss.
And that's really great news, you know.
So we're sorry to get you out of bed so early in the morning to tell you that.
Someone asked if it'll be a Category 4 or 3 at a
keep watching, it could change, but that's what I'm seeing at the moment.
To use a term that we would hear in the U.S., Cilida could, quote-unquote, split the uprights off that track, with Mauritius and Rodrigue being the proverbial uprights here.
Well, I mean, if that's the current track that's directly in between the two, if it goes east of that, then you start having to worry about conditions for Rodrigues.
Yes, yes.
I mean, this is probably closest to the best case scenario you could get. Maybe it goes a little bit further east.
It may well be. We'll see. Nonetheless, significant rainfall has already fallen over Mauritius, and certainly more is likely to fall over there. We could still see rainfall totals up to 200 millimeters in some areas. I did quote yesterday it could be as high as 600 millimeters. It's looking much less than that now, given that the main bulk of the storm is now likely to miss. So we'll keep monitoring it. It could still take a jog to the south, and every mile counts. but it just seems reminiscent of Carlos in 2017 and Birgitta earlier this year, in which Mauritius might well dodge another bullet.
And I know that was something that we had discussed off air, Nathan, of Mauritius being
I didn't want to
under
say it
fire.
publicly, but the way it's looking, I'm a bit more confident on that now.
Yeah, it just seems like these last 3 or 4 storms that Mauritius has had to just sweat out, and then it somehow just haphazardly just moves to the east of them. And if I'm living in that area, I would be looking at this storm and probably giving a few choice words in French, because a storm with this intensity is nerve-wracking.
Yep.
And it's only a couple hundred miles away at this point. You know, if this had, you know, let's say if it was formed like 5 days earlier than it did and had the time to grow in size more, you know, as more time went on, we would be looking at a situation where this storm was already impacting these islands rather than being a small...
And we were watching it as an invest for a very long time. It could have done just that. What prevented it was high wind shear.
And it's a very fortunate situation, you know. Multiple times in the recent, not just this year, but last year as well, we're in situations where people are preparing for the worst and expecting the best, and the best just happens to occur, fortunately. And I guess they're stuck with extra supplies then for the next year.
Do we have any more questions at this time?
Just asked if
Yes, they're
the
fine.
eyewall is
They're
as
coming in
last
very...
update.
We've got 2 people
Fast.
talking at the same time.
Someone just asked if the eye wall is as strong as in the last update.
Our last update was at 11 PM Mauritius time. Well, it grew stronger overnight, and now it's a little bit weaker again. So it's pretty much where we were yesterday, only it's on the other side of that peak.
I don't anticipate much more strengthening from here.
But again, there could be a possibility of a secondary peak. And, you know, we were looking out for an eyewall replacement cycle, because even if the storm was to take on that line and pass in between the islands, if it did an eyewall replacement cycle, the wind field would grow. So if that does happen, then we're still looking out for Mauritius to get possibly strong tropical storm force winds, especially if it throws away its eyewall and makes a new one to fill in its place.
We have some more questions in the YouTube chat, a couple historical and then a couple
Right.
more.
Well, I'll do my
just in
best.
general. Someone's asking, when was the last time December Category 5 happened in the basin?
2013,
2013.
I
And,
believe it
let's
was.
see.
Bruce.
Do we know the name of that one? Because someone asked a similar question. I think they're trying to get the name of it.
I can't remember if there's been any since, but the one I remember is Bruce in 2013. We did updates on that as well.
And someone, they've been asking this multiple times, how did you come up with the channel?
Very, very long time ago.
Wasn't that
It doesn't
explained?
take very much imagination.
I believe that was something that we covered during our Force 13 week a couple weeks
Doesn't take
ago.
very much imagination when the Beaufort scale goes up to 12. But there we have it.
Oh, and I've got some, Nathan, on Facebook.
Because
It's calm outside.
we're pointless if we're not answering your questions, so let's go.
One person's saying it's calm outside. What's happening? I mean, in Mauritius. And another one, what is the closest distance to Mauritius of the cyclone? We know it's already been a Cat 5 on the AU scale. Am
Both
I
scales,
correct in saying
yes.
that? Both scales.
Both scales by
And
our
Nathan,
reckoning, yeah.
Here's one for you, my friend. How many storms have reached Category 5 status this year since January?
Well,
Now-
according to Force 13's analysis, this would be number 12.
Number 12, Cat 5.
That's one off the record.
13.
One off the record. Well, I think we're going to see it before the, well, possibly before the end of the...
No. You
yeah.
saying there's
No.
going to be a Category 5 in the next
There's
9
no
days?
Well,
There's
you
no
never
miles
know.
that show a storm.
1997.
Might see one up here in the off Australia.
Oh, is it going to be Owen, is it?
It's
No,
gonna,
not
it's still
Owen,
kicking.
but it could
It's
be
still on,
the
though.
Northwest WA case, Kimberley.
Yeah,
Or
Owen
it could
pops
even
up.
be
I think I'm
the
going to have to
Coral Sea.
respectfully tell you to dream on, David.
What? Oh, it's still
Well,
popping up
looking
on the
at
left
the
side every
models.
once in a while. It just got a new burst of convection. It can do it.
It has. It's really
It
fighting.
does have a
on.
new burst of convection. It's really trying.
It's fighting on.
Nathan,
here's
something.
another one. Just quickly.
Yeah.
Would you rather go through Katrina
Oh no.
in New Orleans or Maria?
Why is that kind of question being raised?
Someone asked in the
Eli,
Facebook.
I really don't know, my friend. And
How
for
am
Sam,
how is any of us supposed to answer a question like that?
I don't know. I think a more relevant question someone's asking, is it going to move to or away from Mauritius? The line on the screen right now is the extrapolation Nathan made based on recent frames that shows it gunning in between Mauritius and Rodrigues. If the further east it goes, the less likely impacts are, and the more likely impacts are for Rodrigues. The further west it goes, or further south it goes, more likely for Mauritius.
I could tell you this storm has moved 3 miles since the start of this stream and is now 253 miles from Mauritius. In kilometers, I should have looked that up before.
About 400 something?
407 kilometers to the northern tip of Mauritius.
People are saying a new Cat 5 could happen this year. It's not happening. No models. I don't think any models pick up on any other storms the rest of the year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is it for the year, maybe.
Did you have some more for us there, David, or not?
that's it.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks very much for the questions so
actually,
far,
there's one.
and we'll
There's
be
one
ready
from
to
the
take a
Facebook
lot
chat.
more, and we're hoping that we're helping in some way.
I got one from the
Like,
Facebook
really
chat,
quiet.
actually.
Rat's been telling me it is.
Someone asked in the Facebook chat, what is the diameter of the storm? Maybe tropical storm force winds in diameter? Do we want to do that one?
Yeah, I would say it's by this point it's probably somewhere in the region of 300 kilometers. So the tropical storm force winds are likely only about 100 kilometers away from Mauritius. It's ticking down. It's ticking down. Closing in at maybe 2 kilometers every 15 minutes, by the way things are going. So, but it's not going to close in completely by the looks of things as we continue to watch.
And someone's asking a question. I think this is going to be
Has
a
a
definite
cyclone
yes.
made?
Has a cyclone actually made a recorded landfall in Mauritius?
Mauritius.
Yes.
I think Nathan answered that question.
We did answer that question in a previous stream. I don't know how many have, but I remember one in the 1979-80 season that was animated on Force 13 a few months back. Did make landfall on Mauritius.
I'm not sure, but is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center updated? Because I've got the
Probably.
extratropical transition will begin the 36-hour mark and complete at around 72 hours. Low vertical wind shear 10 to 15 knots, and it's tracking along the western periphery of a subtropical ridge, and something. The dynamic model guidance is in fair agreement spread of 100 nautical miles through the next 36 hours, but the spread increases to 265 nautical miles by, I think it's 72 hours.
When will Mauritius feel the strongest effects? What are those effects? And is the beach a safe place? Not really. The beach is not a very safe place. Certainly not by the end of today. And possibly not already. I'm obviously not there, so I don't know what the conditions are there, but I expect the seas will be getting pretty rough. Certainly no time to be out on the beach.
Apology, Joint Typhoon Warning Center has updated their track, and it looks like the cone of uncertainty, is actually, it's got all of Mauritius in.
Well, the JTWC cones are typically pretty large.
They are huge.
So I mean, if you look at another agency, I highly doubt it's going to show Mauritius in the cone at this point.
You mean like Meteo France?
Yeah. But
Well, I can actually show you the Mateo France cone.
But when a storm is this close, you know, conditions can occur outside the cone in this particular condition.
Of course, yes.
You have to recognize that the cone is the projected error in track forecast of the center, not projected size of storm conditions.
And that is something that we emphasize with any storm in any basin, that just because there is that cone of uncertainty, conditions can happen in and outside of that cone.
What's curious is the Mateo France cone hasn't actually updated yet. At least not on my screen, I'm not sure.
When is its last update?
I'm doing something wrong, but it was due to update nearly 2 hours ago. Oh, there it is, I've got the new one, don't worry. The latest cone from Mateo France, it was a caching error. The latest cone on Mateo France looks like this. No, it's not there. It looks like this. Yeah, passing significantly east of Mauritius. Interesting how it has a bit of a more southerly dive in the next 12 hours. Quite brave to be forecasting that. I think it could be a more straightforward southeast, as it has been doing in the last 12 hours. But that's what they're saying.
I think the sim steering currents we looked at earlier are in support of that kind of track there, as it decreases in its intensity.
And there's the look again at the JTWC forecast, courtesy of David there. Let's see if we've got any new imagery.
I can actually pull some imagery if you want me to. I have some infrared shots. And in the meantime, someone's asking what... I think it was... I forget which one they're saying. They're trying to ask which is worse, Irma or another storm.
Oh no.
I could check the chat again for this one. It's hard because I gotta use a monitor I don't have for this.
Silly hypothetical questions like that.
They said Irma or Knock 10. Which
doesn't
one is
help
worse?
anyone.
But there's some imagery I got up. That's some infrared shots. You can see Kananga there weakening on the far right side of the screen, and then Cilida on the left side. That deterioration happening in the last frame in particular is the note to make.
A little bit, yes.
Let me see if I can get more updated one.
Well, while you're doing that...
Oh no. Those last frames in particular, check this out.
Is it improving? I haven't really been able to see this.
This is breaking news, folks. Western eye wall has collapsed. Looking at the latest frame there. Western eye wall has completely collapsed, looking at this imagery.
I think we might have to downgrade our intensity numbers.
Yes. This storm is on a weakening trend now, looking at it. That is a...
I'm one to say some dry air influence is influencing that, Nathan. If you look back to the last couple frames there was a nice sized dry slot in the northwestern quadrant there, and it may just wrapped around in there and just busted that eye wall all to heck.
Let's see if we can get another look here. No, the water vapor imagery isn't as up to date, so we'll revert back to the other one. There's that latest frame. The eye has gone almost, really. The western side is either going to trigger an eye wall replacement cycle here, or it's going to completely lose its eye and rapidly weaken. Now, if an eye wall replacement cycle occurs and completes itself easily within the next 12 hours, then Mauritius could well see worse conditions than we might expect, with more widespread tropical storm force winds and hurricane force gusts.
Also, the weaker the storm is, the easier it is for it to deviate south or west even the tiniest bit as well.
I don't know, Strat. I think when I was looking at the steering currents, even if it were to go down just to a basic tropical storm, it still has it going on a southeasterly, almost to a due south track once it gets past the islands.
I've not been seeing very much of that. apart from when it's way south of the islands.
Yeah, that's what I was, where it's that steering current was showing. I can pull that back up if need be.
At the newest infrared imagery looks very terrible. It looks like the eye is in the
does.
negatives now as well.
Yes, it's awful.
What would Satop say on this, or is it impossible if there's no eye wall left?
Looks like the eyes.
Oh well,
capitulated
if
on
it,
that imagery.
yeah, I mean, it'll lose
Is
category
Satop still
4.
possible on this?
It will lose category 4 status if it continues to look like that.
But it's, I don't know, I think you'd agree to say it's safe to say that that's probably not 150 miles an hour anymore.
Yeah, no.
Maybe 130.
140 takes a while for the winds to die down, even when the structure of the
That's
storm
true.
does
Yeah, on that latest
collapse.
imagery, it's like almost completely closed out at this point.
Yeah, and it looks like some more consistent banding is starting to reach the very northeastern tip of Mauritius right now as well.
Yes, so
Uh,
those
more-
in Mauritius, don't be fooled by what you're seeing with the centre of the storm. Conditions are about to get worse than what you've been seeing recently. Although a lot of people saying it has been calm, so I don't suppose it could get much better than what it was anyway.
Well,
But
the capital's in like the west central part of the island, right? If my
Northwestern
geography's not
side.
there. Northwestern side. Okay. The worst conditions are going to be on the northeastern and eastern side, so maybe there just hasn't really been enough activity there today so far, or yesterday, really.
well, I believe there's a lot of. I mean, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the area, but we've heard from people in resorts and areas very close to the northern tip of Mauritius today.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of messages on Facebook from people today, asking for updates, and even in the chat,
And we're happy to keep
giving updates about
facilitating
winds
those
and
as
rain.
well.
And what about the interaction between the other cyclone?
Kananga.
Yep, with
Too far apart.
Cilida.
They're over 1,000 miles apart, which is, I think, over 1,600 kilometers, so I don't really think you're going to see much interaction, especially because Cilida is going to be moving at an increasingly quick pace to the south-southeast
Yes.
and then southeast.
Didn't mean
Well,
to show this view, but here is the visible
Yeah.
in case you're interested.
Well, Kananga is going to be meandering around the same area for the next 2 or 3 days, so you're not really going to see any interaction between the two. Too much space.
And he's going to give right away to Cilida. So Cilida's in the clear.
Someone's asking if this is going to hit Flak part. Do we need to move? Do you know where Flak is on Mauritius
It's
right
the
now?
eastern part of the island.
Eastern part. I mean, it's always safer to move just in case the worst really happens. If this is an eye wall replacement cycle, then the wind field and the storm size itself is going to expand.
Yeah.
If it's just an eye wall collapse, then we might get lucky. But
Well,
it's hard to tell at this
it's
point in
going to
time.
go one of two ways.
It's safe not to bet on the best thing happening and just play it safe when it's a life or death situation. So if you're on the eastern side, it's better to move south or west at this point in time.
Definitely
With these
west.
storms, it's always best to play it better safe than sorry.
What is this? Someone's saying the new HTWC update shows 145 miles an hour now.
Yes,
The
yes, it
Zero
will.
C ATCF says 125 knots.
Which is the same, yes.
Do we have any microwave imagery? Someone's trying to say that microwave shows concentric eye walls.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
can see if
I
I can
should have
pull
it
that
on the
up.
screen, Nathan.
You've got it on the
There we go.
screen. Is this the latest?
Is that Mike?
That is a microwave image, yes.
That's be
Someone
alright.
It
just
doesn't
add-
appear to be working, David.
It's
Favorable.
not going to work for me.
Intensify.
Let me see if I can pull some up. Should be able to do this without too much of a problem.
He's trying again. Let's
There
see.
we are.
You might want to stop on that last frame.
I can get an
Someone-
animated one that goes up to about 2 hours ago would be the last
That
frame.
is
in this
not
one.
very up to date. That is from when it was peaking.
Yeah,
No, it isn't.
here's one
before
from.
peaking.
This is as of 2 hours ago. Is the last image in this.
All right, here we go.
So this is actually just the past 40. This is just 45 minutes ago from 2 hours ago. So
Hmm.
the oldest frame is less than 3 hours old.
I'm not sure that's concentric eye walls. No.
You can see the western eye wall starting to break in that.
Yeah.
But
It is.
unless there's newer
It's a
microwave
broken
imagery
eye
that
wall.
someone has.
And you
Unless
can
someone
see
has a
where
microwave
the
imagery
and
that
you
we
can
don't.
see where the fault line is, the western side, and that's where the collapse has just happened there.
Someone asked if sea surface temperatures are favorable for the storm to re-intensify.
There's still 26s and 27s, right?
Up until it passes the islands, that's when sea surface temperatures will drop a bit more, but it's more crucially when the wind shear will rise.
When will wind shear rise? How far is...
Literally
someone
when
wanna
it's
be-
passing Mauritius, wind shear will rise a lot.
And that's, latitude, speed, and everything's that it's going to start the extratropical transition at that point, really.
Might hold on a little bit longer than
That's
that.
they currently are saying maybe about 2 to 3 days before it fully transitions.
It also depends how strong it still is by the time it gets there.
Also true.
Exactly.
Yeah, from the water vapor imagery, I imagine dry air will increase by then as well.
Don't know. I haven't seen that, so let me pull it up right now on my own screen, see if I can find anything.
Again, this is rain rate imagery that we're looking at, the satellite estimates only, and you can see a significant area just about to arrive in Mauritius now as well. Just in those last few frames, just to bring you onto that last frame there, and the prior frame to that. So that's the space of, that's actually an hour's different. I should get the more up-to-date imagery. It's my fault for not showing it as it should be. This is what's been going on in the last few hours.
Yeah. We're having a question. Pretty obvious answer. Someone's asking, is this a threat for Mauritius? The answer is yes. It is a considerably dangerous situation. People are completely unprepared on the East Coast. This could be a life or death situation for some people, so it's very important to stay informed about the situation.
Now, to give some perspective on that, Strat, if we were to use when we've covered the northern hemisphere hurricanes and typhoons and the JTWC estimates of where it could be at, you're looking at the equivalent of a Category 3 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, which normally...
I think it's still a Category 4.
Right, but I'm talking at its closest point.
Yes.
You're probably going to be looking at, I think, when we've covered other storms earlier this year, you're probably going to be looking at 1.5, maybe 2 meters of storm surge on the eastern side of the island. This is just some estimates off the top of my head, so they were just speculative. But that is definitely going to cause some beach erosion, some definite rip currents on the eastern side of the island. So for any of you that are there, if you're there, definitely keep an eye on your surroundings. Don't go out into the water. This is definitely not a situation that you want to take your own life and risk it just to try to get any glamorous shots of the storm as it's coming through the wave action.
Yeah, I'd say not just for Mauritius, but for Réunion, Rodrigues, and even if you want to put the extent as far as Madagascar, rip currents are incredibly dangerous. Earlier this year, Hurricane Chris, it wasn't near Florida at all when this happened, but it's rip currents and surf managed to kill someone off the coast of northern Florida.
Absolutely.
These storms, especially when they get powerful, they can generate powerful surf and waves that extend hundreds of miles away from the
Hurricane
center.
Florence caused its first deaths about a week before it made landfall.
It just shows, that storm impacts can happen when the storm is far away from land. Not just because of size, but because of power and exertion that a storm can have.
There's some questions coming in. Could
You had a signal failure there. Try again.
Yeah.
Could Cilida re-intensify?
As stated earlier, yes, it is possible, but given what's happening right now, it certainly won't get to its former glory anymore. I don't think it's going to get back anywhere near Category 5 status. HWRF may well be right on this. Weakening to Category 3 might come back to Category 4 if there's some sort of regeneration, but we're just waiting and seeing on that one. Of course, we'll have regular updates today and tonight as well.
Does anybody have the HWRF intensity scale image?
Let me pull that up actually.
The HWRF model looks like... Oh, this isn't one that we were showing earlier.
Way easier than me.
Let's show another one. Alright, let's see what we're looking at now. Okay, so this was at the start of the run, which was a good 6 hours ago now. So this is what the HWRF predicted that the storm would look like pretty much right now. As long as I'm looking at the right thing here. Yep, so it had the storm still at Category 4, but not on the southern side, which is interesting. Where's Mauritius? There it is, appearing onto the map now from the south. The storm weakening quite a lot, and it's reaching its weakest point on Saturday night, just before it makes its closest pass, and then some random bout of intensification, bringing it back to Category 4 briefly just as it passes Mauritius, and then continuing to move on and weakening and broadening and turning post-tropical eventually. Displayed all on one graphic, it looks like that. That's what the HWRF is predicting on its forecast. Not so sure whether that will happen.
No. Well, hopefully the storm just stays weaker.
To reiterate, Class 2 warnings remain in effect in Mauritius, and a pre-cyclone alert is in effect in Réunion. Those who are on Mauritius should be making preparations for tropical storm conditions and the possibility for hurricane force gusts, especially on the north and eastern part of the island. And of course, to stay away from the beaches. Certainly don't venture into the water.
Yeah, someone asking again, oh, is this an eyewall replacement cycle? Too early to tell. It's either that or an eyewall collapse.
To me, it
Oh,
looks
well,
more
the eyewall has
like-
collapsed. It's either got to make an eyewall replacement cycle or it's gone.
And just because the eyewall is collapsed and it seems to be on a weakening trend now, don't take it any less seriously. We're just putting that out there.
I had a question. I forgot to ask this. Do we know what the CDPS rating would be for this storm right now?
It was an 8 earlier.
Do you think it's still that, or is it probably a bit lower than that?
It's probably
now?
a 7 now. Still would cause catastrophic damage if it arrived right now. And until that number lowers, then it's still one to take very seriously indeed. We're still watching the frames along that line that I have drawn on the screen, because the more it follows that line will see the storm through without much problems for Mauritius. So if it stays on course on that line, then Mauritius should be clear of most of the storm's impacts. And at the moment it is staying true to that line.
I mean, really,
If
the
it
best
moves
case
west,
scenario-
sorry, if it moves west of the line, then Mauritius is in more trouble. If it moves east of the line, then Rodrigues might be in for a bit of trouble.
If it stays on that line, would that put Rodrigue in more trouble?
If
Um,
anything,
no.
all it would do is create more wave action on the western side of Rodrigue, and you're still going to have the consistent wave action on the eastern side of Mauritius, since we're talking the southern hemisphere. So all the winds are going to be going clockwise. So it's going to batter the western side of Rodrigues, and the eastern side of Mauritius as it passes down the center of that line.
Yeah.
I mean, best case scenario for both of these places, if you're looking at it as a whole, both Mauritius and Rodrigues rather than one or the other, is that it maintains its exact track right now, follows that line exactly, and we get a situation where more minimal conditions occur, maybe some tropical force sustained winds on the eastern part of Mauritius.
I must point out one other thing, though. It would have been true anyway, but even more true now that the western part of the eye wall is gone. The eastern part of the storm is much more dangerous than the western part. That would have been true anyway for two other reasons. One, in the southern hemisphere, the eastern side is the largest usually, and this storm is no exception. And secondly, because of the dry air on the western side of the storm isn't quite as wet as the eastern side.
Yeah, that's true. But right now, best case scenario is it keeps this track and weakens significantly as it goes along it. Mauritius maybe gets some tropical storms or sustained winds on the eastern part of the island. Rodrigues avoids most impacts. And by the time we head into the work week and Christmas, clear skies for both of those, for everyone around, as the storm starts to move pretty quickly to the southeast. Although it's clearly too early to say whether or not we're going to end up with that fortunate of a scenario, but that's really the best case scenario we could possibly expect.
All right, everyone in the room right now, it's time for your closing comments. We're just looking at this radar imagery from Réunion first of all.
I don't know, I guess mine would be stay tuned and also make sure to listen to your local officials. They always take precedence. They're going to have the most immediate and up-to-date information about your precise area. If they say to evacuate or take certain precautions, make sure you follow their orders, because this is a dangerous and life-threatening situation, even if only more minimal impacts occur.
And yeah, Nathan, this is the radar shot from Mateo, France, out of Reunion Island. My thoughts on this is, if you're in Mauritius, Rodrigues, Reunion, any of those, keep your eyes on this. Kind of hope that it does stay the course of that southeast, that doesn't deviate west or east. But
And
if
you
it
can
does,
see there
be sure to have a plan and be prepared.
significant rain on the way from the northeast there. That is probably the first major part of the storm that's going to arrive in Mauritius, and it's getting very close right now. So this will be the first real... This will probably be the moment that people will really feel the storm. And that what's shown on the radar there is the same thing as that little blob attached to the southern side of the main bulk of the storm there. Doesn't look too nasty, but it could blow up a little bit more as soon as it reaches the land area.
Saturday for Mauritius, and then through midday Sunday is going to be where we see the worst conditions overall. This is really
Saturday
the start
night.
of it.
Overnight hours of Saturday night, I think.
What time is it in Mauritius right now? 3 a.m. about?
No. It's 3 a.m. here in the UK. It's 7 a.m. in Mauritius.
I'm sorry. I knew that.
Strat's done his research, folks.
Okay, I've only messed up the time zones on
All right.
video titles and now, so it's okay.
Time for us to end. We hope this live event has been useful to you. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't, or if we weren't at least trying to be useful tonight, or this morning, of course, as it is over there in Mauritius. We're going off the air now. Our next update is going to be a regular update, which will be airing, which will be posted on our channels in just an hour's time. At 8 a.m. Mauritius time, we'll have another update with the latest. And then I'm not sure what's going to be going on during the daylight hours, but we'll definitely be back for the evening hours Saturday night into the early hours of Sunday morning, if necessary, if the storm is really hammering the area by then. In the meantime, you can send us a message on any of our social mediums, and of course follow them as well. Facebook and Twitter, search Force13 all in text. You can also add my Skype account, Force13, and on Discord, my personal account, Fool13, add extension 9094. And of course you can join our Discord server. All the links you need are in the description of this live event right now, and if we do go live again in the future, it's on this link if you're on the YouTube stream on our channel. So if you are, I would bookmark it if I were you, because next time we're back we'll be right here and you'll know about it. So that's it for now. Hope everyone over there has a great day, and as great as it can be in light of the impending storm threat, but hopefully it's going to continue straddling that line, and well, you never know, Mauritius may well be in the clear with that collapsing western eye wall, but stay watching very closely indeed. Thanks very much to the team tonight, and we'll see you again soon. Good night.